Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I have a very special guest with me today. I have someone in the business who's doing some monster things that I think will be fun to talk about. We have Sean Christopher with us today, who's actually on a train headed to Baltimore. So this is a first for the show. How you doing this morning, Sean?
I'm awesome, Michael. Good to connect with you on here, man. I've been looking forward to doing this ever since we first started talking about it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I don't want to spoil the surprise. Why don't you share with the audience what your little piece of the business looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into real estate probably about 10 years ago, and a good friend of mine was actually doing real estate in Baltimore, Maryland. And so at the time, it's funny how life works and it kind of takes us on some twists and turns and adventures. But Baltimore was never on my radar in a million years. In fact, I spent 15 years, I'm from upstate New York. I spent 15 years living in Florida. And I love Florida. I mean, I love me some beach. I love me some pool. I love warm weather. And honestly, I always just saw myself being in Florida more than anything. I have family up in New York, so I'm up there a lot. But I try to I try to get up to New York when it's warmer, as opposed to 6 feet of snow on the ground. But anyways, a friend of mine was doing real estate in Baltimore, and him and I would have a ton of conversations about it. And Baltimore was never on my radar, but I took a trip down to Baltimore. This was 7, 8, 9 years ago, and took a trip down to Baltimore, spent a long weekend with him down there, and I was really intrigued with what he was doing. He was doing rental properties in Baltimore, and essentially what he was doing, Michael, is he was buying properties, rent, and selling them to investors that were looking for rental property. And I got to kind of analyze his model, and he was doing it for himself as well. He owned quite a few rentals himself, and so I got to kind of analyze his model and see what he was. And the one thing that really intrigued me, and I didn't even know this at the time, and I think I was living in Baltimore for almost a year before I even discovered this. But Baltimore, Maryland, at one point, I don't know if they still are, I haven't really paid attention, but at one point, Baltimore, Maryland was named by Bigger Pot and Realty Track is the #1 grossing rental market in the entire nation.
Wow.
And so now I saw the opportunity in Baltimore when I spent some time with him and saw what they were getting for their rent properties down there. And now at the time I was totally green. I was a complete newbie. But my instant reaction was, dang, that's a nice return. I mean, that's a really nice return. And I saw what the return was, and again, I was new to the business. I didn't know a whole hell of a lot about it, but I saw that this guy was just killing it in Baltimore. He himself was making a real nice return for his money, and his investors were getting somewhere between like a 15 to 20% return on their money, which is really unheard of in the rental market. I think that the nationwide average covers somewhere around 10% from what I've seen with a lot of different rental properties in different states. So anyways, we took the leap of faith. We moved, my family and I moved to Baltimore, and we started a business in Baltimore. And so we've since that leap of faith years ago, I think we've done somewhere around 300. We've bought, renovated, and sold somewhere around 300 rental properties, and I do own quite a few myself personally, but our bread and butter, our model, so to speak, has been pretty much what my friend taught me years ago, and that is that we buy properties, and I can go into a little bit more detail about our method for buying of the properties, because it's rather unique, but we buy, renovate, and we sell rental properties to investors looking for a good rental property, looking for a good return on their money, really, because it's not just about. Sorry, I almost dropped the phone. It's not just about the rental property itself. I work with investors every day that have money in an IRA or a 401k, and basically my conversation with them is, hey, there's a better way to diversify your money. I don't have to tell people to pull all their money out of one thing, but take it. If you got an IRA, convert it to a self-directed. Use some of that for real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really cool. So you spend a long weekend in Baltimore with a buddy. You see enough. Then earlier you said you like warm weather, but yet you see enough of a possibility that you move to Baltimore. And I don't know Baltimore all that well, but I would not call it
Yeah,
warm.
yeah. Oh no, it's not warm. As a matter of fact, when we moved to Baltimore, I was actually under false pretense that Baltimore was much warmer than upstate New York. It ain't.
That's funny. All right,
Yeah,
so you get into the you're basically you're doing kind of flips, but you're doing it in a unique way because you're buying inventory, repairing it, and then your
yes,
ultimate
yes,
sale is to a landlord, right? To an investor. Um,
yeah.
that seems unique,
Exactly.
right? I think today it's probably called turnkey.
Yeah,
That's a new moniker. And how long you been doing this? Was it 3
yeah,
years?
yeah. No, almost 10 years now.
Oh, 10 years. I'm sorry. 10
Probably,
years.
probably about seven. Probably about seven actually is what it's been.
All right. So again, just easy math, 7 years on 300, that's about 40 a year.
Yeah, roughly speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that there's so many ways to go. Why don't we just go to the beginning of the process? How are you, I don't know, finding and securing, inventory to buy in a market that's, I'm
Mhm.
sure, very different today than it was 3 years ago, let alone 5 years ago?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, hugely different. So this is what makes Baltimore so unique, right? So, I have always been a big proponent. I've owned multiple businesses over the years, and I pride myself on being a bit of an education junkie. And so I really, so when we got to Baltimore, I made it my job to learn everything there was about Baltimore, not just from a real estate perspective, but just overall understanding the city of Baltimore. And so, what we discovered, Michael, when we got to Baltimore was that there was just this really, really unique opportunity that was happening in Baltimore. So I'm sure that you remember the urban revitalization that happened back in Chicago and New York City, and you saw it
Sure.
happen in Brooklyn and a few other areas, but just this major revitalization where you saw areas where they would not be considered, what I would say a nice area to live in, and now they're selling homes for millions of dollars in those areas. So essentially, what we saw is a very similar process happening in Baltimore. So about a year into being in Baltimore, the governor of Maryland committed $230 million to a revitalization project that they were working on in Baltimore. That happened not long after we got there. Shortly after that, Kevin Plank, who is the CEO of Under Armour, which is one of the larger corporations in America.
Yeah.
Very, very successful company, successful guy. I've had the pleasure of having conversations with Kevin about real estate. Kevin, I discovered upon moving to Baltimore that Kevin owned 8,000 rental properties in Baltimore, which I thought was really interesting.
Wow.
So you got this high level CEO, and look where he's investing money. So don't reinvent the wheel. Find people that have what you have, do what they do, and you'll have what they have. Right? So
Simple.
it's a very moniker that I've come up with. But what Kevin was doing is investing in a specific area in Baltimore. It's called Port Covington. It's one of the few areas in Baltimore that's still at waterfront property in Baltimore, but yet you can buy very inexpensive. Did $232 million to their renovation project, right? So, so those were a couple things that happened, and then just recently, about 6 months ago, the president was in Baltimore, and they signed a new bill that basically is creating significant tax breaks for investors who want to come into Baltimore and invest in properties in what they call their opportunity zones.
Yeah.
In Baltimore, and so there's just been a lot of really unique things that are happening. So essentially, and I know this is kind of a long answer to your question, but what we're doing, Michael, is we're buying properties in these areas. We are literally finding exactly the areas where the city of Baltimore, where Kevin Plank, where the president's opportunity zones, we are searching copiously in these areas, and we are finding properties that are in these areas because it presents a unique opportunity. Our business is based on word of mouth. We don't even do a whole lot of advertising, to tell you the truth. Our business is based on word of mouth. We have a lot of repeat buyers. I have a lot of buyers that tell their friends and family about us because they're happy with what they're getting. But one of the reasons why they're so happy with what they're getting is I'll never forget, years ago, a friend of mine said to me, "Do you want cash flow or do you want appreciation?" Right? And this was his question to me. And my answer was, I said, both. He says, "You can't have both in Baltimore. You can only have one or the other." Well, I called bullshit, because I believe that if you search hard enough, you can really have everything you're looking for. And so I really made it my mission to discover where could I find that in Baltimore. So here's a great example for you, right? We're renovating a property in Baltimore right now where I sold that property to the investor for $45,000. Okay. We are doing the renovation on the property. I think it's I want to say it was a $20,000 renovation. So they're all in for $65,000. We will get that property rented out for about $1,300 a month.
Wow.
And one block up from where this property is located, there's houses selling for $200,000. So that example in a nutshell, Michael, is why I love Baltimore so much, why we've done so much business in Baltimore, and why my investors are really happy and love Baltimore. I mean, I get phone calls from California investors all the time saying, "Hey, can I buy in Baltimore?" So that's how we go about finding the properties, and it's just a very unique opportunity that I don't see a lot of places.
Yeah. So if I were to sort of net that out for others, you are investing the time, really understanding what's happening in Baltimore, right? Where the power players have created their laser focus. And then what you're doing is going, okay, they're going here. And then you dispatch, direct marketing, door knocking, all the above to sort of find sellers. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah. We buy tax liens too. So my partner and I buy tax liens in Baltimore, and we'll buy bulk groups of tax liens too. So we'll pick up 50 to 100 properties at a time. And they're not all home runs, but usually somewhere between 50 to 75% of them are good. And so that's another model that we've utilized too, is by purchasing tax liens. That's a very complicated process. And to be quite honest with you, he handles that side of the business. I'm more on the investor side of the business. So don't ask me how to buy tax liens, because I honestly don't know.
Yeah, no. But basically, for this conversation, it's another way of attracting inventory.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just trying to walk through the process in my head. So I can see how you're getting inventory in the top of the funnel. And based on your example of buying for 45, repairing for 20, leasing for 1,300, or renting for 1,300, it sounded like you're selling the inventory before it's repaired, or at least in that example, if I caught you correctly.
A lot of times, yes. A lot of times we actually are, because it's just a little bit of well, let's put it this way: there's a lot less overhead involved.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Us,
yeah.
Right. So if we can, and it's funny because, again, this goes back to something you and I were talking about earlier, right? When I first got to Baltimore, Michael, everyone told me that I could not do it this way. They said, "No, you can't do it. It'll never work." And let me tell you something that you'll learn about me. Whenever someone tells me I can't do something, I am on a mission to figure out how to do it.
I love that, Sean.
So they said, because when I was new to Baltimore, I didn't have any money. I didn't have the money to buy. I didn't have the money to buy a couple of properties and then spend the money to renovate them, because I was brand new to the business. And to be quite honest with you, my story is kind of a cool one. When I first got in the business, my family and I were about to be evicted from our apartment and become homeless. And my family would have taken us in, and we wouldn't have really become homeless. But we were really down on our luck. It was a really rough patch in our life, and frankly, we didn't know what we were going to do. And I believe in the power of prayer. I prayed and I said, "God, open a door of opportunity for me. I don't need this handed to me on a silver platter. I'll work my ass off for it, but just give me an opportunity." And the opportunity presented itself, and we jumped at it. We took a leap of faith, and it worked out. And it hasn't been all roses. I mean, we've had some massive failures along the way, and as we all have. But you just keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
But essentially, yes, that's what we're doing. We don't always do it that way. I mean, we've evolved a lot over the years and made some significant progress. So we don't always do it that way, but I prefer to do it that way because it's a win-win for everyone. And frankly, a lot of my investors like that because they're stepping into a significant amount of equity in the property. So again, let's go back to the $65,000 example that we talked about a minute ago. That house will appraise all day long for $125,000 after it's done. So they only paid $65,000 for a house that's going to appraise for 120, 125.
Yep.
So the investor's happy because they're stepping into immediate equity in their property.
Yeah. So that makes
that's why it works, frankly.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I was when you were sharing the story and I did the math of basically 40 houses at a time, my brain went to, wow, that's a lot of capital you have in repairs, because I'm thinking 90 to 100-day hold times.
Yeah.
I'm going, oh my God. I mean, once you have 7-figure nest egg or something, I mean, I'm just like, my head was exploding. But now it makes perfect sense. You find now. Here's a question. Do you actually own the properties for a heartbeat, or do you control the properties via which one?
We do own them for a period of time, because when we win the bid on the tax lien, so what we're doing is we're bidding on that tax lien. And so when we bid on the tax lien, we actually take the deed to the property. So yes, we do own that.
Okay, cool. So let's just, I know it's really hard to do averages, but I just want to see if this feels kind of right. So, you're out, you again, you do your homework, you learn where the power players are investing, you sort of go there, you buy in bulk, you door knock, you do whatever you can to find inventory. You find an asset that's undervalued. It's probably beat up a little bit. Let's just say the average purchase price is $50K. So you secure that. And then you own it. I guess I'm trying to figure out. So now I get it. Now you have the deed. Do you go out and try to get an estimated repair bill so you can inform your potential buyers? Like in your 20K example, you can say, hey, we think it's roughly 18 to 22. Or do you just call up a buyer and go, hey, I got this house on 123 Main Street. Send your team out? Or how does that kind of work? How do you get the 20?
So usually I'm sending one of my contractors out to the property to estimate the work that needs to be done. Here's why that is. Again, all of this process has been really unique for us. 75% of my investors do not live in anywhere near. Most of our clients are out of state, and I think the reason why that is. So here's the thing. If someone lives in Baltimore and they're doing real estate in Baltimore, they probably don't need us because they're already doing all the work that we're doing. I'm not saying that's the case across the board, because we just sold a house yesterday to someone who lives right in Baltimore. So very nice husband and wife. So that's not always the case. But what I found is that ironically, the value of investing in Baltimore is almost more highly valued by someone not living there than people living there. So we have a ton of out-of-state investors we work with. So I've worked with investors in California and Texas, in New York, in DC. I mean, you name it, we worked with them. So in that case, what we're doing, and that takes a very, and I'm proud to say that our investors trust us, and because a lot of times investors never even see the property.
Right.
I got guys in California and Texas and New York. They never see the property. Call me up and say, hey, send me your current inventory. I like this one, or whatever, and they just buy it. Now, what we do for them during the renovation process to make sure they're comfortable, especially for a new investor, is we'll send that investor pictures and videos of the process of the renovation while it's taking place, so they know what's being done. And then at the end of the renovation, the property does have to be inspected by a Baltimore inspector, so they get an occupancy certificate. After the property is inspected. So we really go out of our way to try to make the investors comfortable, as possible. But it is kind of interesting that we're dealing with a lot of out-of-state investors, and we just do whatever we can to make them comfortable with that process.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and that's what I was hoping the answer was, because again, right, out of state, the last thing you want to do is have to build your own GC team and all these own, that's just that's the headache people don't want. So I was thinking you were going that way, but I had to ask.
Yeah, and Michael, that's really that's where the value of our company is that, and that's what I always tell my investors is the reason why you want to work with us is because we're the experts. There's very few people that know Baltimore better than myself and my partner.
Right.
I mean, we literally know Baltimore. He's been doing business in Baltimore for 25 years. So, and he's been a big resource for me for how I've learned the business. So there's very few people that know Baltimore better than us. And we just put all of our expertise to work for the investor in every way, shape, and form. So our contractors have been doing work in Baltimore for 40 years now. The guy who heads up my contracting team's been doing it for, I think, 50. And so we've proudly put together a team of very experienced people that provide a lot of value to our investors, and they don't need to do anything. I mean, I got a guy that pulled $100,000 out of an IRA the other day to buy a couple of properties from us because he just had it sitting in the IRA. He was only making about a 6% return on his money, and he saw what we were doing for our investors, and he said, "Heck, let me have you guys." And as we got to know the guy, he was just impressed with how much we knew. And again, that's just our insatiable thirst for knowledge and becoming the experts in our field and making sure that we provide that value to the investors so that they don't have to. One guy said to me the other day, "Man, you've made this so easy for me because I didn't have the time to learn all this, but you guys are the experts. I don't need to learn it." It's great, and it's something I'm very proud of that we've been able to offer on this.
No, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm seeing. The value that your team provides is, again, that upfront knowing sort of where to turn the ship, right? That's valuable.
Yep.
And then it's the infrastructure once you find the asset. And yeah, sure, you make a little money on the margin, as you should, right? You should be paid for your time and expertise.
Exactly.
Now, so I guess the one thing I'm still playing with is, okay, now that the product's done, let's just use the 65K example you showed. You bought for 45, absolutely. 20K, rented for 1,300. Does your team also pick up the property management? Like you do the day-to-day monthly report? See?
Yep.
Now I see.
Yep.
So truly,
we also
not only turnkey, but you're also providing that day-to-day management or landlording work.
Yeah, I mean, in our mind, it was a no-brainer. We had to, because what we saw happening was, when we first got into the business, we didn't do the property management side of things. And I'll be honest with you, property management is a giant pain in the ass. I don't love it, and I make no money on it. It's funny because whenever a new investor who isn't really familiar with how property management works, our property management fee is 10% of the monthly rent. And sometimes I'll have someone say, "Oh my God, that's so high." I'm like, "Listen, you have no idea.
No
I'm losing
idea.
money. Like, I'm losing money. I do not make money on property management. I solely offer property management as a value add to my investors because I do value the relationship with the investor." And so we want to make sure that we're offering a full service solution. And so it's just funny because I'll sometimes have someone say, "Oh man, that's high." I'm like, "It's not."
Yeah, I got to tell you, you could not pay me to property manage. I don't care if it's 20%.
Oh,
you couldn't pay me.
Oh, listen, man. I'm with you. I'm not gonna expound anymore.
Yeah. No, but I think
we're happy to offer it.
Yeah, I think it's important for your business model to do that because here's the deal, right? If you don't offer that, somebody comes in, they get excited by this story, they buy a property from you, they're excited, they turn it over to some deadbeat property manager and they rip them off. They'll never be back.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
that's the problem. And Michael, that's what happened our first couple of years in business is that we did go out and work really hard to build relationships with people who seemed to be stand-up people, and even were referred to us by someone, and then I just found out that they sucked, and it was terrible, and I felt horrible, and it was like we really worked hard to build those relationships.
Yeah,
and I, again, I say this with complete humbleness, but we really do feel like we do a better job than anyone else. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because we really work very, very hard to make sure that our investors are happy.
Well, that's the key. Is your mission is different than every other property manager. You have a vision of the investor as an investor, not a landlord, right? They're different perspectives. And because you have the investor mindset, they're cool.
Right. And customer service is just so important to me. I mean, providing that high level of customer service to it's something that is very lacking in general in a lot of our businesses nowadays. Is just that high level of customer service. You just don't see it a lot, And so, but once in a while you do see it, and it's very admirable when you do see it. You know what I'm saying? And
Oh,
so
absolutely.
that's really my goal. Is, I think Seth Godin calls it creating raving fans,
Yes.
is what he says.
Yeah.
And I'm just a huge believer in that. And without our investors, we wouldn't exist as a company. So
Amen. Yeah.
if I'm not going out of my way to make them happy, and listen, there's situations that happen. I mean, we hope we can get a tenant in the property within 30 days. Sometimes it takes longer. I've seen it take as much as 2 months or so, and so we never want that to happen, but once in a while it does. So
Yeah.
I'm also honest with the investors too, and I try not to set the level of expectation too high. And I'll be honest, I'll say, listen, we typically are able to get a property rented within about 30 days, but just know that sometimes it goes a little bit longer than that. And so I don't want you to have an unrealistic expectation. Know that we're working very hard for you and trust us to do that. But don't be too pissed off with me if it takes longer than I hope that it's going to take.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, so I love what you're doing. I totally get the whole model. I love the fact that you've stepped up and owned the property management, the sort of day-to-day after the fact. Awesome. But what happens? Have you thought about the business? Because again, I think Baltimore is different today than it was 5 years ago. I think the opportunities that are out there are probably
no doubt, yeah.
fewer and far between, I'm guessing. And probably more expensive for sure. You see that trend continuing?
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, because frankly, you're 100% right. And this is actually what I say to investors. It's funny because obviously there's those people that are, tend to err on the more skeptical side of things, right? And I say to them, listen, the way that this market is going, you got maybe another couple of years before it's this good.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you gotta strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. And so they have been going up because of all the renovations that are happening throughout Baltimore. This new thing that the president signed in. Listen, whether you like the president or not is irrelevant to the fact that what they did was fantastic. And this opportunity zones that they're doing in Baltimore, and the massive tax breaks that they're giving investors, regardless of your political affiliation, it's a very good thing. And it's a good thing for investors, and it's a great thing for the city of Baltimore. And so it's something that people should stand up and take notice of. And there really is a window of opportunity. And so, at some point in the next, I would say 3 to 5 years, I know I'm going to have investors call me and say, damn, I wish I listened to you. And, it's all good. It's all good.
I gotcha. So as we kind of wrap this up, how can people get a hold of you? Because I know people watching this are going to go, hey, I need to look at Baltimore. I need to talk to Sean. How can they get a hold of you? How can they learn more about your company? All that good stuff.
Well, I'll just give you my is it all right if I just say my cell phone number?
Yeah, it's up to you, man. Your call, your show.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's 407-591-2007, 407-591-2007. And if you call me, I'd love to know how many people end up contacting me as a result of this show. And so, make sure that when you call me, you mention that you saw me on Michael's show. And our website is nationwidewholesale.investmentproperties.com. It's www.nationwidewholesale.investmentproperties.com. And I'm sure that when you post the video, we can put a link to that as well. And we have some other exciting things happening too. We're expanding into a number of other cities across the U.S. right now. It's a project that we've had underway for about a year now, and so we're slowly but surely looking to expand in other cities. So we don't just stay in Baltimore. We love Baltimore, and we think that Baltimore is probably one of the most unique rental opportunities right now. But we've been eyeing some other markets. One of them is Detroit, Michigan. It's a very good rental market.
Yeah,
we like that area a lot, and we got our eyes on some other areas as well. So lots of exciting stuff happening.
Well, very cool. I love what you're doing. I love how you have the investor mindset. You're taking care of the entire process. Makes total sense in the business model. How you are reducing your capital outlay. Because I was like, how does that all work? I think you've done something very special, Sean, and you should be very, very proud.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. It was really awesome to do this interview. I'm glad we were able to make it happen, even on
Yeah.
the train.
Yeah, it worked out. The Wi-Fi gods were with us. So I appreciate it.
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
has been so much fun for me. Thanks.
absolutely, man. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.